Fear is a force that shapes our lives in profound ways. It grips us in moments of vulnerability, whispers in the quiet of our minds, and builds walls around the paths we most need to take. Carl Jung believed fear wasn't an obstacle to avoid, but a guide to follow. He famously stated, "Where your fear is, there is your task." This simple yet profound truth reminds us that what we fear most often contains the key to our greatest growth, our deepest truths, and our truest purpose. What happens when we avoid fear? It doesn't disappear. Jung observed, "What you resist not only persists but will grow in size." Fear thrives in avoidance, feeding on the energy we spend suppressing it. It becomes a shadow that follows us, silently influencing our thoughts, actions, and decisions. Over time, it begins to dictate the course of our lives, even as we pretend it isn't there. How often do we stay in a job we hate because we fear failure? Or avoid expressing our feelings in a relationship because we fear rejection? These are not trivial fears. They are clues, pointing to the areas of our lives that demand attention. Fear is not just a reaction to external threats. It is deeply tied to our inner world. It signals unresolved conflicts, unmet desires, and untapped potential. Jung emphasized that fear acts as a mirror, reflecting the parts of ourselves we have yet to confront. This is why he said, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." The inferno represents those intense, often overwhelming emotions we try to suppress: fear, guilt, shame, anger. These are not things we can simply sidestep. They demand to be faced. The idea of facing fear as a path to transformation is echoed in countless myths and stories. Take the Greek myth of Theseus and the Minotaur. Theseus enters the labyrinth, a dark and confusing maze, to confront the Minotaur, a creature that embodies terror and destruction. Armed with courage and a thread to guide him, he ventures into the unknown. The labyrinth is a perfect metaphor for the human psyche. It's a place where fear resides, but also where our inner truths are hidden. Like Theseus, we must enter the labyrinth of our fears, confront the monsters within, and emerge stronger and more self-aware. This process is not just about bravery, it's about transformation. Jung believed that fear serves as a gateway to self-discovery. He wrote, "We don't get to the light without going through the darkness. The darkness is not something to avoid, it is something to embrace. It contains the lessons we need to grow." Facing fear is like walking into a dark cave. At first, all you see is the blackness. It feels oppressive, overwhelming. But as you take tentative steps forward, your eyes begin to adjust. You start to notice details, the contours of the walls, the faint glimmer of light reflecting off hidden treasures. The cave, once terrifying, becomes a place of possibility. Fear, then, is not the enemy. It is a teacher. Jung's perspective on fear invites us to reframe how we see it. Instead of viewing fear as a sign of weakness or failure, we can see it as an opportunity, a signpost pointing us toward what we need to confront to grow. This requires a shift in mindset, from one of avoidance to one of curiosity. What is fear trying to tell me? What lies beyond it? To answer these questions, we must delve deeper into one of Jung's most profound ideas. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. True enlightenment, he argued, is not about escaping into idealized notions of purity or goodness. It is about bringing awareness to the shadowy corners of our mind, to the fears and desires we suppress. This process of making the darkness conscious requires honesty and courage. It means acknowledging the parts of ourselves we'd rather deny, the insecurities, the jealousies, the pain. But by bringing these aspects into the light, we free ourselves from their control. This idea is powerfully illustrated in Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. The character of Jean Valjean undergoes a profound transformation when he confronts his inner darkness. Valjean, once hardened by years of imprisonment, is consumed by bitterness and fear. His encounter with the bishop, who offers him grace and forgiveness, forces him to face the moral abyss within himself. He could have ignored this confrontation with his soul and continued down a path of anger and vengeance. Instead, he chooses to acknowledge his fear of vulnerability and change. By doing so, he transcends his past and begins a journey of redemption, ultimately finding purpose in helping others. Jung believed that until we make the unconscious conscious, we remain prisoners of it. He wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Fear is a key part of this unconscious. It resides in the depths of our psyche, subtly shaping our actions and reactions. When we refuse to face it, we surrender control. We might convince ourselves that life is just happening to us, that our circumstances are dictated by external forces, but in reality, it is our fear pulling the strings. Think of someone who constantly sabotages their relationships. On the surface, it might seem like bad luck or a series of unfortunate coincidences, but beneath that, there might be a fear of intimacy or abandonment, something buried so deeply in the unconscious that they're unaware of how it shapes their behavior. By refusing to confront this fear, they remain trapped in a cycle, repeating the same mistakes and calling it fate. Only by bringing this fear into consciousness can they break free. This is not an easy process. Jung compared it to a hero's journey, a descent into the underworld of the psyche. It requires facing not only fear but also pain, regret, and the parts of ourselves we'd rather forget. Yet, as difficult as this journey is, it is also profoundly rewarding. When we confront fear, we strip away the illusions that keep us trapped. We discover truths about ourselves that were hidden beneath the surface. We become more whole, more authentic, and more capable of living with purpose. Take the example of Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl endured unimaginable suffering in the concentration camps, but he didn't let fear consume him. Instead, he confronted it head-on, asking himself what it revealed about the human condition. Through this process, he discovered that even in the face of despair, we have the power to find meaning. Frankl's experience illustrates Jung's point that fear is not a barrier, but a gateway. It forces us to ask difficult questions, to search for deeper truths, and ultimately, to grow. When we avoid fear, we remain in a state of inertia. Life feels stagnant, repetitive, and unfulfilling. But when we face fear, we ignite a spark of transformation. This process is like alchemy, the ancient practice of turning base metals into gold. Jung often used alchemy as a metaphor for psychological growth. Fear, in this analogy, is the base material. It seems crude and undesirable, but when subjected to the heat of self-awareness, it transforms into something precious. By confronting fear, we turn it into wisdom, strength, and purpose. This transformation is not just about personal growth. It has a ripple effect on the world around us. When we face our fears, we become more empathetic, more compassionate, and more willing to help others on their journeys. Consider the character of Samwise Gamgee in The Lord of the Rings. Sam is not a traditional hero. He is small, humble, and full of doubts. Yet, he confronts immense fear to support Frodo on their quest to destroy the One Ring. Sam's courage doesn't just transform him, it inspires those around him. In facing fear, we not only change ourselves, but also create a space for others to do the same. Jung's insights on fear remind us that the path to purpose is not a straight line. It twists and turns, leading us through darkness and uncertainty. But this is not something to dread. It is something to embrace. The darkness is where growth happens. It is where we discover the hidden parts of ourselves and learn what we are truly capable of. If you're wondering how to begin this process, the first step is simple. Listen to your fear. Instead of running from it, ask yourself what it's trying to tell you. What unresolved conflict does it point to? What part of yourself have you been avoiding? This kind of self-inquiry can be uncomfortable, but it's also liberating. Fear, after all, is not an enemy. It is a guide. It shows us where we need to go, even if the path is difficult. As you walk this path, remember Jung's words. Where your fear is, there is your task. Let fear be a compass, pointing you toward your purpose. The journey will not be easy. You will face doubt, discomfort, and moments of despair. But if you persist, you will discover a light on the other side. A light that is not external, but within you. It is the light of self-awareness, resilience, and transformation. Fear is not here to defeat you. It is here to awaken you. It is a reminder that you are capable of more than you think, that within you lies the strength to face the unknown. By stepping into the darkness, you will find the treasures hidden within. the truths that have been waiting for you all along. The journey begins not with the absence of fear, but with the courage to face it. This is how fear reveals your true purpose.